something that we used to do back in the day in the PR days. Anyone who's listening from a PR lens will know there was something called an SMT, and it was a satellite media tour. And we feel like the modern version of that is a PMT, a podcast media tour, where we actually...
Welcome to the Bold Brand Show. If you're in the AEC industry and want to grow your firm, we're sharing exactly how bold and innovative firms win more. The sad truth is, most firms that are struggling in the AEC industry are still doing things the way we've always done them. But this show is about finding a better way. I'm your host and founder of Bold Brand, Josh Miles. I'm a published author, veteran of the TEDx stage, and a brand strategist with over 25 years of experience. But my superpower is my focus on AEC firms to understand how branding and marketing in the professional services industries is wildly different than for retail brands like Apple, Amazon, or Starbucks. So in this podcast, we're going deep with AEC firm leaders, marketers, and innovators in the AEC industry. We'll focus on the hottest topics and trends in AEC to uncover the growth secrets of the most successful firms and how firms can create lasting legacies and perhaps what the future has in store. I've got a special deal to share with you from my friends at BizNow. I regularly hit up BizNow events here in Denver, and honestly, they're my go-to for networking in commercial real estate and AEC. Each month, they pull together these great panels with heavy-hitting speakers who actually know what's happening right now in different markets. Not just theory, but real deals and trends. What's cool is they're not just a Denver thing. They run these events across the country. So if you're looking to stay on top of market shifts or want to connect with people making moves in CRE, it's worth checking out. If you're interested, check out BizNow. That's BISNOW.com/events to see what's coming up. You can use the code BOLD, that's BOLD, when you register to save 15% on your ticket. Trust me, the connections you'll make are worth it. Special thank you to BizNow. Welcome back to the Bold Brand Show. On today's episode, we're chatting with my friends at Brand Groupies, Carey, Balogh, and Lauren Genest. With over 25 years of experience in brand development and management, public relations, social media marketing, and special events, Carey is a visionary entrepreneur who delivers exceptional experiences for clients in architecture, design, construction, engineering, real estate, education, and professional services. In 2015, Carey founded Brand Groupies, a full-service social, PR, and personal branding agency that partners with B2B service companies and C-suite leaders. Brand Groupies brings a 360-degree approach to every strategy, driving long-term growth and increasing brand awareness for legacy organizations like Mancini Duffy. And if you haven't listened to episode 1 yet, check that one out where we interview Christian Giordano from Mancini Duffy. Before launching Brand Groupies, Carey was a PR director for a fashion and rock and roll themed children's play place. Carey earned a degree in journalism and PR from the University of Maryland and a master's degree in fashion promotion from the Marangoni Institute in Milan. When she's not hosting the Brand Groupies podcast or playing guitar in her mom band, Mamadrama, which I think is awesome, Carey resides in Red Bank, New Jersey with her husband, 2 sons, and a dog. And Lauren Genest, equal parts creative and strategic. Lauren is a corporate communications and public relations expert who helps executives shape their public personas. Led by 20 years of trusted client and media relationships, Lauren has developed and implemented internal and external strategies to increase client visibility and promote long-term brand growth. With a keen understanding of the ever-evolving multimedia landscape from print to digital to podcasts and broadcasting, Lauren shines a spotlight on the dynamic people and stories that fuel brands and businesses. Her work has been featured in Forbes, the New York Times, the New York Post, and also includes high-profile events and initiatives for national brands like Mancini Duffy, Burberry, and Hermes. Lauren received her bachelor's degree in communications from the University of Delaware. When she's not traveling to the best beaches worldwide, she resides with her 2 children and dog in Little Silver, New Jersey. Carey and Lauren, welcome to the Bold Brand Show.
Oh, thank you so much, Josh. Excited. Oh, so great to be here. An honor.
Well, of course, the 2 of you are the reason why that we got to chat with Christian Giordano in the first place. Even back in my Obsessed show days, you guys had recommended Christian for the podcast then, and great to reconnect with him. So like I said, we'll link back. If you're watching YouTube, we'll put the link up here or wherever that shows up. Broadly today, we're digging into the innovations that you spearheaded in the AEC and professional services industry. And specifically, your agency, Brand Groupies, has really leaned into what I'd call the new school of PR, because PR is not what it used to be. And especially in the AEC space, especially social media, public relations, and podcasts. So I'm excited to dig into all of that with you today.
Thank you. We are too.
Yes.
Of course, this is not the same world that I come from. The two of you were sort of in the fashion space before. How do you come to professional services from the world of fashion?
That's a great question. I think we both have 2 decades plus, in the fashion industry. And, it was almost like a training ground for, attention to detail and just what's next, looking ahead 2 seasons, always on the cutting edge. And, I think it was exciting in 2017 when Mancini Duffy became a client, and we soon realized, oh, wow, the AEC industry, has some catching up to do when you think about other brands and fashion. And, we were making an impact by just applying that, the fashion PR lens to some AEC brands. And then we went all in.
Yeah, I think it just kind of came naturally to us to start telling the stories behind the brands. I think that, the AEC industry is reluctant to, share and tell stories about what's happening internally. And we were just having this conversation with someone the other day, actually an engineer, and he said, oh, we don't know if we should, sort of put things out there. And that's what attracts talent. It's what makes people want to work, because people want to work with people. So really, our strategy over the last several years has been to shine a light on the individual leaders at each of our clients. And it's been a lot of fun, and it comes really naturally to us because we were trained by working with such incredible global brands for many decades.
My running joke in AEC always used to be, if you want to know what the future of marketing and design and PR looks like for AEC, just look at what everybody else is doing right now. That's where they'll eventually get caught up to.
Yeah.
I do think they're doing a better job now. Lauren, specifically, how has PR changed and how are things changing now in 2025?
Yeah, I think PR has changed so much. I got started in the early 2000s. I graduated in 2001. So I've been at this for quite a long time. And that was back in the day when print was king and things were maybe a little bit less ad driven than they are, I think, today. And then the world of digital popped up and podcasts. And where we see such an opportunity is we work with very visionary people who are already a few steps ahead of the industry. I think that's why they're inherently attracted to work with us. And that's who we partner with. And we've actually developed a concept over the last several years, similar to something that we used to do back in the day in the PR days. Anyone who's listening from a PR lens will know there was something called an SMT, and it was a satellite media tour. And we feel like the modern version of that is a PMT, a podcast media tour, where we actually have our clients, the faces of our firms and brands, go out and guest on industry podcasts to tell their story, highlight maybe what they want to be known for today, what differentiates them, talk about notable projects. And then I think where the superpower comes between me and Carey is Carey's a social media whiz, and she has an incredible team behind her. And we take the podcast and we pulse it out strategically on social media. So even if maybe you never get a chance to listen to the entire podcast episode, we feel like, we really try to tag the host and be strategic about tagging their companies. And the relationships that are born from one interview have so many tentacles beyond social media. It gives you content for your website and a newsletter and a LinkedIn newsletter. And I always say most hosts like yourself, Josh, are not full-time podcast hosts. This is a side hustle that probably feeds, the main part of your day job. And so the connections that can be made really lead to lots of new opportunities for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a minute since I've hosted a show, but I kind of forgot how much work it is to get the show off the ground. And so it feels like a second full-time job right now.
It does. No.
But I was thinking about, back when I started in AEC, my clients were asking me about websites. And, in all seriousness, I would have architecture and engineering firm principals say, are you sure we have to have a website? It was like, that was a real question. And for sure, once social media came onto the scene, that was a huge question too. Can we just skip this? Can we just ignore this? And Carey, I know your clients, of course, get it, but what's the current temperature that you're seeing in the market with in response to social in particular?
Well, it's getting better. I think they're realizing that they do need a full-time person, whether it's in-house or whether, they outsource, but it continues to be an education process. I think them realizing the value and, every marketing department is set up differently. And, they might have it in-house or they might have a copywriter and then they outsource creative or video. And it's just so interesting. Whereas, back in fashion, you had your social, your PR team, your social team, it was a line item on the budget and it's not. And so it's really educating the leadership and, it's not just someone everyone has different skill sets, but I think you need an experienced person who really knows the brand to be putting your company out in the public. Like that's what everyone, goes to first, social. So, you really have to think about that, and how that branding affects your whole company and the future of your brand.
Yeah, I don't think it's uncommon even for, smallish mid-sized firms to be marketing and communications departments of 1 or 2 or 3 people. And, you get a lot of slashes behind those titles, pursuit specialist / proposal / communications / social.
We call her Sally in accounting.
Yeah, Sally.
Often we're like, oh, Sally in accounting is doing our social. We'll put it on her list.
Yeah, we've heard that.
Well, when it comes to social, Carey, which channels are you seeing the greatest impact, especially in AEC and professional services?
Yeah, so AEC, LinkedIn, for sure. We've worked with other industries in the past, and we have never seen such engagement on LinkedIn with the AEC industry. And, the last time I looked, I think 5% of people on LinkedIn were actually posting. So, a lot of people are just scrolling and scrolling. And, the more you post, the more top of mind you are for people in the industry. But I have to say, people are engaged and decision makers are engaged, leaders are engaged. So LinkedIn for sure. And then of course, Instagram, Reels, stories, I think in design and, architecture, especially, I think it's really important. And also for talent acquisition, I think a lot of the new talent say they're following the Instagram and, they really have a feel for the company culture through that.
Well, Lauren, maybe similar to the pushback on website and social, as firms are thinking about podcasting as a potential tactic, what's the thing that convinces an AEC firm that they need their own podcast, their own show?
You know what? The cool thing about having your own podcast is it's an automatic content machine, right? We always say no one ever says no to being on a podcast, right? Like people talk about themselves and their stories and you're borrowing someone else's platform to talk about what you love to do. And so hosting your own podcast, I think can really let's say you're trying to develop a new business relationship and maybe you want to invite somebody that you've had conversations with over the years that inspire you and you really find to be interesting. After you have that one-on-one conversation on a podcast, your relationship with that person is different. And whether they hire you, tomorrow or 5 years from now, the fact that you shared your platform with them will give them sort of a different opinion of you. I also think the perception of a podcast when done well, the way that you're doing it, Josh, with, newsletters and sharing content out on social, it really enables you to kind of cross-reference your brand with cross-promote it with other audiences. So you tag the guest, you make sure you to link, back to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, even just being on that, you have this living legacy for a company for years to come. Carey actually launched the Brand Groupies podcast back in 2018. 18, right?
Yeah, 18.
And how cool for your future generations, to be able to listen to her and the stories she's had, and same for you, Josh, as a podcast host.
Yeah, I was looking back. I did a presentation last week in New Orleans about podcasting for recruitment. So what the benefits of launching a podcast might be to attract and retain talent and all the different strategies that you might look at for that kind of thing. But I had to look back and see when I launched my first show was actually Leap Day of 2016.
Oh my
Wow,
gosh,
you
you're
were
the
an
OG.
So I think that makes me great grandpa in
Wow,
podcasting
that
years.
is really back in the beginning.
That's
That's awesome.
incredible. Oh my gosh.
Lauren, I can imagine like even as we're extolling all the benefits. So it's the business development benefits, it's the
Mm.
recruitment benefits, it's the huge content benefits, such a wealth of content that you get from doing these shows, especially when they're 30, 40, 60 minutes long. But there are a few challenges. So what would you say are some of the biggest hurdles for firms to overcome to be able to launch their own show?
I think it's wrapping their head around, honestly, how much we take off their plate so that they can literally walk into the room and host a podcast and go back to their day job. So we really take all the heavy lifting off. We call it a low lift for our podcast hosts. So we work closely with them to develop the name and the branding for the podcast. We develop all the verbiage around it. And then we align on a wish list of guests. We book the guests. We handle all of the production on the back end leading up to. We write the script. We write the questions for the guests. And of course, with their approval. So they put their stamp of approval on it always. But really so that they can walk into the room and feel really confident sitting down with somebody, having a conversation for 30 or 40 or, minutes, maybe an hour, and then walk away knowing that we've got them on the back end. So we do, we put it up on YouTube, we have YouTube Shorts, we get all the clips out on the social channels. And so I think the biggest thing, I think it sounds like a really heavy lift to people initially until they understand how we can help take all of that kind of strain off of them so that they can keep their eye on the ball running their company and then continue to move the needle forward with a really interesting and dynamic podcast.
Yeah, I would say I'm not a control freak. I'm a little bit of perfectionist. So the first couple shows is like I want to do all the details myself. And now I've edited through episode 5. So going back, this will be episode 8. So excited to have this out there. But after going through 5 of these so far, I'm like, maybe I should be outsourcing this production work. So maybe we should chat about that. If you're talking to a firm who's not doing any of this yet, where is a good place for them to maybe get started?
I mean, even if it's just assigning someone to own it, whether it's within the firm and, just looking at their current, whether it's their current projects or events that are going on, whatever's happening at the moment, even if it's just documenting so it doesn't feel overwhelming. Oh, we have to do this whole video shoot. And even if it's just posting once a month, having someone put together 4 posts that they're going to post out once a week for a month. If it's not too heavy, I think just to get started. And I'm a perfectionist too. So, even if it's just getting it out there is better than nothing,
So tell me a little bit about the rest of your team, who all is involved and what are your thoughts on how to scale up when you need to scale, or what's, we taking over the world or keeping it light and nimble? What's it look like?
It's a great question. And I think you get it because from a branding perspective, it's always evolving the skill sets, right? Like we didn't need a videographer 4 years ago, and you need that copywriter. You need someone who knows all the social tools and the trends and the new platforms. And there are so many skill sets. So we actually recently hired a director of content strategy. So she came from Twitter X, and we're really excited to have her. Before that, she was at VaynerMedia with Carey.
Oh, very nice.
Someone we've always looked up to. And we're really excited to level up with our team. And, content runs through our PR, podcasting, and social media divisions because we need that 360-degree branding across all divisions. And they go so hand in hand. So when we work together, those key messages are really aligned. They're really, we're pushing those wow factors out with every clip. We have a pulse on the client's brand and their core, their identity and the goals for their future so that we're all on the same page and the public perceives it that way too.
So much of this always comes back to branding, and it's kind of like, I know that everything for me is branding, but in AEC, it's very different than fashion. So when you're when your clients, when your firms are talking about, like, so many firms are getting lost in the sea of sameness, or they're in that shortlist presentation and the prospect is at the other side of the table saying, why should we choose you? The role of AEC's brand is really different. I'm just curious how Brand Groupies, Carey specifically, looks at the role of brand in AEC.
Yeah, so I think, as you know, to follow up on what Lauren said, it's really about the person and the people behind the brand. Every person is original. No one's like you. So already that's a differentiator. What sets you apart? And we do this full brand discovery session with every client, and we break down their brand pillars, even their services. All right, they have 20 services. What are the top 3 revenue streams? Which division do you want to grow? Do we focus on that? And also the wow factors. What does set you apart? And how are you a different leader? How are you growing? Are you using technology? Are you doing an entrepreneurial initiatives within the firm, things that, not just, oh, we do a pizza party every Friday, not the normal company culture things. Like, what are you really doing that's different? And both, having come from PR, we do everything with a PR mindset. So what's going to, stand out in the media and on social media? And it goes back to the authenticity of that person. And right behind
it helps. That brand discovery session, it helps us come up with the brand pillars. As Carey said, one of those pillars is the faces of the brand. So you may work with a firm that has 500 employees. Many of them could probably be the faces, but if we're just starting out with you, let's hone in on the few leaders that we want to become known. There's this great book by Mark Schaefer. I don't know if you've read it. It's called Known. And really, you don't have to be Kardashian known, but you need to be known in your industry amongst the right people. So if you're trying to find hospitality clients, you want to be known in the hospitality industry as the go-to architect for hospitality. And so when we think about those wow factors, that's what we would say to you, Josh, if I was, emailing you about Christian years ago and I wanted to name drop, 5 little tidbits that would, in the first sentence or 2 of my email, make you say, oh yeah, I've got to have this guy on the podcast. And so that's how we kind of unpack, how to present these brands to the public from the PR and the podcast and the social media lens.
Yeah, I was talking about that in the podcast session a couple weeks ago, was, helping really connect the dots for that prospective guest of, like, either we've had these other peers of yours or these other, like, really big names in your industry, that's why you should come on our show. Or if it's the flip, it's the, our guy has been on these 3 other shows, and so of course you're going to want to have them on there. It's really just kind of connecting the dots for them to help them quickly understand why this makes sense, even if they've never heard of you or your show or your guest.
100%. I think you had one of our other clients, and she grew up in Alaska. Her parents turned off the TV for 6 months a year so they would go out and play in nature. She was a D1, soccer player. She became an architect and an engineer, and now owns a really cool niche, firm that is, shaking up the industry. And so, that's a version of what we came up with in the brand discovery session.
I was thinking too, when you're talking about differentiation in this space, one of the first prospective engineering clients I ever met with, this is back in Indianapolis, and they had this poster on their wall in their conference room, and it had all of the industries that they work for across the top and all the services that they do down the side. Yeah. And there was an X in almost every one of those possible combinations. And so, very seriously, I looked at them and said, so which is the most profitable, or what's the most important to sell more of, or strategically, what are you trying to increase? And they just sort of looked at me with a blink. Yeah. Like they had no idea. It was just like, well, we're just really good at all these and we do all these things. And like, how could anybody ever remember you for anything if you're trying to be everything to everyone? It's
and we
just
actually used
challenge.
to do that too at Brand Groupies. Actually, and the moment we niched down, I feel like that's when people started to understand. People used to send us like chiropractors to work. We don't really work with chiropractors. Thank you for thinking of us. And so it's funny. We met with somebody the other day, and she does a very unique niche in the industry, something that was such a surprise for what she designs. And we can't wait to brag about that, because that is going to be a surprise to you. I'm sure I'll be hitting you up for that conversation when I can talk about it.
Kind of the companion to the branding side is really the business development side. And Lauren, I'm curious if you're doing anything differently now in 2025 when it comes to business development?
Yeah, I think we continue to kind of look internally at, what truly moves the needle for the clients that we're working with. I think the podcast media tour has been a really interesting, avenue that we've been exploring for years, and that's such a key service for what we do now. And I think when we think about BD, each internal marketing team at firms that we meet with is very different, right? So sometimes they have, like they might have a really great social team internally, or they might have a great PR team internally, but perhaps they're just not familiar with, pitching their leaders on a podcast media tour. And so if we can, lean in and get started with them to help them look great and kind of fill a hole. We don't always have to come in and do all of it. We have the capabilities to do that, but I think there's a lot of ways that we can work with teams. So for instance, with the podcast media tour, we actually add the social media layer to it, and we don't have to manage our whole social media channel. But what we do for that, and for many of the clients who have a podcast that we manage for them, is we'll give them the social media clips, and then their team pulses it out amongst the rest of their content. So they're really getting kind of like the best of us. And so maybe they don't need us, every single day, but we're there to support throughout the month and share really interesting content to add to their existing strategy.
I mean, they probably do need you every day.
Yeah.
It's just that they don't have to pay for you every day.
But, if they're already structured that way, I feel like there's a lot of different ways they can work with us. And I also think, we've been doing this now for a long time in this industry too, and we understand that education is a big part of it, and trying to break down what we do in a way that's simple to understand. I always say, I feel like my mom still doesn't really understand what I do, and I've been doing this for such a long time. What's PR versus advertising, and then the social, and now we're talking about podcasts. It's like, what the heck is that? So we try to make it really simple for people to understand. And I always say that in fashion, everybody had PR. They would pay us before they paid their rent. They knew the value of getting their story out, and they needed that in order to move product. B2B is a little bit different. And so we understand that a lot of these, companies that we might be exposed to don't necessarily have room for us right now. And in the future, they might think of us if they make room in the budget.
Well, I know I'm a little biased because I'm a big video fan, but I was really surprised to look at the latest numbers when it comes to podcasting, even that YouTube has surpassed Apple and Spotify. Now it's kind of like YouTube 1, Spotify 2, and Apple 3 for where people get their podcasts.
Sure.
So video is really taking so much more of the pie there. Carey, maybe it's not just about podcasting though. I'm curious where else you're looking at video when it comes to both promoting yourself and your clients.
Yeah, sure. I mean, video, we've always been pushing video, but now, more than ever, it's like it's a must. And so, our podcasts are going to YouTube, and we're, like Lauren said, we're doing the shorts and clips, and whereas we used to do audiograms, now it's just on video as much as we can, and really thinking about social video campaigns, naming different series, thinking really about which leaders to interview at the firms and what they need to talk about, and going from a few minutes to now, okay, 20 seconds to 30 seconds, let's get that clip across, but it has to be funny and not funny. Not funny all the time, clever, but entertaining. You have to add value. And so there's a lot of thought that goes into it. It's almost like, entertainment, production. There are so many things that go into it now. It's really evolved, especially on LinkedIn. Video has taken hold, and it's just getting more and more important for everyone to dive in.
I think from a PR lens, we talked about, starting out with just focusing on a few of the leaders in your company. But I feel like doing a really compelling video series can bring the rest of the leadership team to the forefront and share, the different practice areas they might be working on, interesting projects, bring their personalities to life, without necessarily having them, be the kind of faces from a public speaking lens.
It's interesting too, thinking about a lot of our clients in the past who rebranded or launched a new website, and they want to put the announcement out like, oh, check out our new brand, check out our new website. And came to realize very quickly, like, if that's all there is to the story, nobody really cares about that. So it's more like, what more story could there be? And by the way, while you're there, check it out on our new website, or, what is the real hook to the story? What is the packaging to the story? And how important that is really when it comes to video as well.
Yeah, we tried to, I guess, like, even when we're focusing on a project or featuring a project, we try to tie it into something that's going on, like Cinco de Mayo. We had a, Tio Taco restaurant featured, but with a link back to the website, so there are ways to kind of incorporate, everything and do things a little bit differently, but it's a lot of strategy too. It's, thinking, how do we want to put that across? And, whether it's a fun behind the scenes video of someone on the website, just really thinking how it can be on brand, but also catches people attention. If it's not an attractive post or quality post, I don't know if it's worth posting.
Yeah. Quality over quantity always. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's, even if you've got like a really great meaty thing to post, if it doesn't lead with something that is drawing you in and hooking your attention, and that headline or that cover image and all of those little bits, like, somebody may not stick around to see that if it's not packaged correctly.
Yeah.
So, Carey, this is your chance for the crystal ball segment of the show. Any bold predictions for the future? What's happening next? What trends are we going to see? What's going to be our hottest new market?
Oh, good question. I think we'll continue to, go, double down on video. I think, there are also influencers in the industry and partnerships. You see the collaborations happening on Instagram, thinking of being creative with other, or collaborating with other people and firms in the industry to do some collab posts. We love doing roundtable podcasts, getting, a few people on a certain topic and going on like a podcast media tour with a few people that might be working on a development together. So just kind of thinking outside the box, I think.
Yeah, I love all those ideas. I think that some of the better performing episodes we've done are those roundtable episodes that Carey mentioned, whether it's either spotlighting a really incredible project that has so many different, teams coming together to pull it off, or even an event. We did one a few years ago for Construction, which is a big event that happens in New York. It's a big fundraiser and it has a lot of wow moments. And we brought the team in from City Harvest, was the charity partner, and the people that were running Construction, and that was a really fun way to spotlight something different and kind of shake things up. We did a 9/11 episode years ago because one of our clients had been in one of the towers, and thankfully they all made it out safely. And so we did a tribute episode the first season to talk about that unique experience in the firm's history. So there's so many different ways to kind of shake things up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about live at all. Is that an element that you're incorporating with any of your clients from a show perspective?
It is something that we've talked about, and we'd love to start implementing that. I think it is something that it gets great attention. It's also, an event on LinkedIn that you can start teasing out. So we've definitely experimented with that.
There's a few different ways I think people do it. I've had clients be on people's podcasts, and then they actually have launched the podcast as a live, but it was pre-recorded. But there's still all the teasing up to the live, and then when it go, during the live, it's actually the pre-recorded episode, and then of course there's the actual live. And we've had clients, we've secured those types of opportunities for clients too. So it's definitely something we'd like to do more of in the future.
Yeah, I've seen that work really well, especially as you have a larger community kind of already built to get, it's not just about watching it live. It's more about interacting with the viewers who are on. So whatever platform, whether that's YouTube or LinkedIn, or trying to do all of them at once. Stan Balogh had me on a couple weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
And they did the same thing. So it was a pre-recorded, pre-edited. They posted it live. I was actually in an airplane when it went live. So I was certainly not
you were not
on live when they were playing it live. But
Great.
But that was a pretty cool thing. So something I haven't experimented with yet. I've had enough variables, enough X factors already
Well,
to
that's
not.
the thing. I know. Definitely no editing on that.
Yes.
One.
Yes.
You know.
It freaks the inner perfectionist in me out pretty good.
Oh gosh.
My buddy Tori and I did a few episodes of a short-lived Josh and Tori show. Not saying we've hung up the show just yet, but I was like, we should do this live. We should try to, build this out. He's like, you actually want me to speak on microphone live? He's like, we will be in so much trouble. The show will be canceled so fast.
I know.
So we have not done that yet, but that might be a good place to experiment too, where there's maybe some lower stakes.
Yeah.
Man, how did we go an entire episode without talking about AI? Is there anything that you're excited about or doing differently because of AI right now?
Yeah, eye on the pulse of it, and just seeing how it can be layered in, but still always having that human touch. I think Carey was a journalism major, I was a communications major, so, and same with you, Josh, probably, right? So it's like, just having like a little touch of that, but really just making sure that things always sound human and like a person. There's also things you can notice, that are a little bit noticeable when you start to pay attention about the habits of certain platforms, I think too.
And we're like, we're big fans of a post or communication instead of just general words that everyone could use. We're, innovative. So, just really thinking about, all right, really what differentiates every single thing you're writing and making sure that take it to the next level.
Yeah, I've really kind of leaned into using it more as either a draft or like to help me brainstorm on a thing. So even as I was launching the show, I was asking ChatGPT, if you were going to launch podcasts with this industry, what are the things that you should do? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing most of those, but those are 3 things that I didn't even think about before. So, that's, really, really interesting connections.
Yeah, I can definitely give you some great ideas. And I feel like it's almost like a Google in some ways for me I feel like I'm almost using it more for Google, just in the day-to-day things, not so much work related, but just day-to-day things you do and deal with.
I just used it for travel. Like, if you're going to do this, should you take a train? Should you take a car? And I said, oh, that's too long. Give me a shorter trip with scenic views.
No.
And it's incredible. I mean,
I was just telling my stepdaughters that they're backpacking in June, and I was saying that to them, like, when you're at this place, just plug it in. They were just in Spain a couple of weeks ago. I was like, just plug it in and say, I'm standing in this square. Like, what are the must-sees, or what's a great divey restaurant I could go to, or what, if I have 3 hours in this area, what should I do? It's really cool for that kind of stuff.
Chat GPT over Yelp.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
It really is.
Cool.
Well, Carey and Lauren, it's been awesome catching up with you.
Thank you for having us. For all these years of working with you, it was really fun.
Honor, and love what you're doing, and really excited for your show. It's awesome.
Well, Lauren, tell us where we can find the Brand Groupies podcast and any of your other clients' shows that we should check out in the AEC space.
You can find Brand Groupies on all the popular podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple. And our website is brandgroupies.com. And then we also are Brand Groupies across all social channels as well.
Well, awesome. Thank you for joining us today. We'll make sure and link to all those things in the show notes. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Josh. Thanks a lot, Josh.
Thank you for joining us today on the Bold Brand Show. For all of today's show notes and links to our sponsors, head over to boldbrand.show. Be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter where I'll update you on the latest episodes and other exciting things happening at Bold Brand. If you liked today's episode, do me a favor and share this episode with a colleague. Over at boldbrand.show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you can watch full versions of each episode and join the conversation by commenting below. The Bold Brand Show is produced by yours truly, Josh Miles, and is a product of Bold Brand LLC, a branding and video agency for AEC firms based in Denver, Colorado. Visit boldbrand.com to learn more, or hit that orange button up top to schedule a time to chat about your branding or video project. Catch us next time where we chat with another bold innovator in the AEC industry. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.